Okay. Good morning, everyone. For those that are in Australia, good morning. For others around the world, probably good afternoon or good evening. We've got attendees turning up as we speak. Apologies for the slight delay. Unfortunately, we won't be able to go live on Facebook at the minute. It wasn't connecting, so a little bit unfortunate. But anyways, that's life. We'll record and do a live broadcast a little bit later on. As I said, good morning. My name's Chris Douglas from Chris Douglas Partner Solutions. I'm here with
Chad Councilman, a lot of recalls.
So we'll be co-hosting the session. We've got Michael McKenna from the VACC, top left.
Morning.
Michael, unfortunately, he's got this thing in the background there. 2019 Premiers, Richmond Footy Club, passionate Richmond supporter. Anyways, and down the bottom, we've got Justin Walker from Grant Walker Parts.
Good morning. Evening.
Excellent. So we had a big session last week. We were in the UK last week and we spoke to Aviva Insurance and also the likes of eBay UK, which was great to have those guys on. They shared a lot about what they're doing in the UK to support automotive recyclers and to grow the use of recycled auto parts with the collision repair industry. Obviously, there's been a lot happening with COVID-19 for one, but there's been other stuff happening in the industry that Michael McKenna will talk to us about with regard to EPA guidelines and so forth that have been released just, I think, last week. Michael, is that right?
No, they were released about 3 weeks ago, but they got lost in all the kerfuffle of COVID-19.
Of course. So, like everything else. So, we'll be talking a little bit about those later on. And although they're Victorian guidelines, I think you'll find that most of the automotive recycling jurisdictions around Australia and even New Zealand, for that matter, will take them and probably use as a good foundation to move forward with their environmental guidelines for automotive recyclers. So Michael will talk a little bit more about that as we go through the session. I want to, as I said, welcome everyone to the call, but I also want to just make a note at this point in time that stay tuned right through to the end. At the end of this call, we're going to be announcing who's going to be on next week's call, which we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but got 3 great international guests that'll be on next week. So stay tuned for that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Okay, let's not hold up any longer. Michael, can we go straight across to you? Actually, before we go there, everyone, please, there's going to be a lot of information coming through from Michael, some really good stuff that Justin will be sharing with us. He's got a couple of slides that he wants to share with us as well. So I think good learnings, good opportunities to share information. Use these forums to interact and ask questions so that we can respond to them. As I said, the sessions that we have where we have good interaction are the most valuable to the participants. So, Michael, if I can throw over to you, there's been a lot happening. We've been seeing a lot of emails coming from the VACC, a lot of Facebook posts, a lot of interviews with Jeff Gwillan and so forth. Tell us a little bit about I suppose, where do we start with COVID-19 and what you're doing for the automotive industry generally, but also for automotive recyclers?
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thanks, Chad, and thank you for the opportunity. Good morning to everybody. Look, VACC, we all know about COVID, of course, and we all know that it's touching everybody. Nobody is immune to it, pardon the pun, to the issues surrounding COVID and the business impact of COVID-19. VACC is taking at the moment a 4-point strategy to assist automotive overall, and in that automotive, of course, dismantles are a key part of it. Part of my role at VACC, just so you know, is in Victoria, is I look after pretty much every operator who is a licensed motor car trader, or which means new car dealers, used car dealers, dismantlers, truck dealers, motorcycles, and so on, and many dismantlers who are licensed either as like LMCTs or under the second-hand dealers regime. those guys, from our perspective, have been affected greatly due to the very size and nature of the businesses. So our 4-point strategy has been about ensuring that you guys as employers, the first part of the strategy is you guys as employers know what you can and can't do as far as your staff are concerned. Now, at the start, it was very messy. We lobbied aggressively, and we were one of about 100 different lobbyists who lobbied aggressively for some sort of wage subsidy to be introduced, and hence, lo and behold, you have JobKeeper, which has been gratefully received by industry. It's been a really good initiative. Had to happen, otherwise I struggled to comprehend what would have happened if government hadn't have introduced JobSeeker. But again, we just have needed the first part of the strategy is to make sure that industry is aware of what's going on. So to do that, we've had to provide a lot of support material, and we have fatigued members early days, and we deliberately did that because you needed to know, we believe you needed to know what to do, and you were looking to the industry association for guidance to get through it. We, like you guys, were just learning because no one's ever experienced anything like this anywhere ever before. So we, like you, were learning, and we, unlike a lot of you, are very well resourced and could manage to put processes and programs in place to assist you. Part of that program and part of that assistance has seen VACC employ specifically a person by the name of Andrea Chwalko. Andrea is a payroll expert and one-touch system payroll expert, and is also a government grant specialist, has her own external company and so on and so forth. So we've employed Andrea for the benefit of VACC members overall, including dismantlers. Andrea's been a great hit with members, guiding them through, particularly through some of the complexities that it's around with JobKeeper. We've also noted that the other resources that we put in place for all members is we understand that the impact psychologically on not just on the business owners but the staff as well, who are struggling to comprehend or maybe feeling insecure or just not quite right about the situation. We're offering free psychological assessments and advice from our external contractor. If you're a VACC member and you do need to avail yourself to those to Andrea and to the psychological assistance, please reach out to me at VACC and I'll send it, or I can even send it to Chris, and Chris can redistribute it to all the attendees today. The next part of the strategy is, and an important part of the strategy, and one that actually involved Justin Walker as a dismantler, but someone who's, well, he looks better than most dismantlers look in real life. So, no offence intended. Yes, there's plenty, and you can take it that way. The strategy too was to make it very clear to consumers and government that automotive retail is open and ready to go, and needs people to go in to do business. We were hearing stories of police pulling over consumers on their way to dealerships, automotive repairers, and so on and so forth. We had to address that directly with the Minister for Police's office, who gave quite clear advice, and it was advice that we knew, but we had to get it from the Minister's office, saying that automotive retailers, dismantlers, repair shops, dealers, so on, can open. There's nothing to stop you from opening. If you want to close, that's your own decision. And police should not be pulling you over and telling you not to, consumers over, not to visit an automotive retail business. So again, we were clear we got that direction, and that's also supported by the Public Health and Safety Act, Section 6, which makes a specific mention that one of the 6 reasons you can actually leave home is to visit a retail operation if you need to purchase a product, good or service. Again, now I'm not sure how many attendees on these calls are the VACC members. The others from interstate locations, your own state legislations may be different, but again, I will share all the information with Chris again and the bulletins, and Chris, again, you can distribute them, and other interstate people can, I would say there'd be similar type scenarios or arrangements made in the States. Strategy. So automotive retail's open. Justin and 6 other members of 6 different sectors feature in a video and radio campaign, just stating that automotive retail is open, and it's been greatly received by some members. Again, I'll share that link with Chris and you, and for anybody on this call. I mean, it's got national significance, so you can share that link from your Facebook site, your websites, your TikTok, whatever the case may be, sites or LinkedIn or whatever. I threw in TikTok there for Justin because these young guys they like these new social medias, whereas me and Chris and Chad, we like to read a book.
And
Anyway,
Snapchat too. Don't forget.
thank you very much. The third part of the strategy again is to lobby that all businesses, no matter what your turnover is, should be eligible for all forms of government relief packages associated with COVID-19. We've done some surveying specifically only, and just this gives you a flavour for what's going on because it's all relative. New car dealerships at the moment are suffering a 70% downturn in business, which is massive. And that was, remember, that's already in a market that was down in Victoria by 12%. So in effect, you could say 82% year on year. Part sales at a new car dealership on average are down 41.3%, or $41,000 per day per dealership. New car dealers have also are now employing 29% less people than they did from March 16, and that number is steadily growing. And when I say they're employing, they've either stood down or terminated people who have been able to be terminated. The message to government is quite simple and is along the lines of, you should not be using turnover, a random figure such as turnover, to define who gets government assistance and who doesn't, because as you guys know, and I'm only using car dealerships because this is the only hard data that I have, but again, I think you can take it across the board. Huge turnover or high turnover does not necessarily equate to profit or substantial profit. That's economics 101, I think. In fact, there's a lot of dealerships that I see that are doing it really badly. Now, we sampled 70 dealers, and some of the figures are horrendous. I shudder to think what they would for COVID-19. In COVID-19, they're horrendous. This will flow down. So we're pushing government in that regard to open up the parameters, particularly with land tax. There's a lot of you guys in here. Justin's one, and I know I'd be shocked if Chris the Greek wasn't another, who have massive land holdings, who have massive land tax bills that they've got to pay. Now, the Victorian government has given an exemption. Has provided some relief for landlords who have offered rent assistance to commercial tenants of up to get some relief from land tax of up to 25% off their bill from the last financial year. But again, we've got to make sure, but that's contingent on thresholds and turnover and staff levels and so on and so forth. We've got to make sure that every business, regardless of size, is in automotive is able to access this. We are aggressively lobbying the federal government and state government with only just this morning sent in our paper by MTAA, who is our national association, to government to say urgent assistance is needed and required, and the exemption for automotive retail must happen. This is an industry that's already in distress before COVID-19. It's an industry that hasn't gone with its hand held out. Automotive manufacturing was heavily subsidised, but automotive retailing never saw a cent during the times of the automotive transitions and all those types of things. What I implore you to do, if you're not in Victoria, I know some of my other interstate colleagues are on the phone, please be in touch with your MTA, your Motor Trade Association, be it in New South, South Australia, Western Australia, Tassie, Northern Territory. Please be in touch with them to get the lay of the land as far as you're concerned. Again, I'll share all the information from the VACC with Chris. And again, if Chris wants to or is able to, he can distribute that out to you guys. But there's a lot of stuff in there about rent assistance. There's a lot of stuff in there about land tax. It's all high level stuff, but I think it's stuff you need to be around. If you're smart enough to be on this conference call, you'll be smart enough to understand what I've written. Okay, so I'll take that thing apart from you, Justin. So we'll get that done. what are we doing? Well, we're still learning as we go forward about what COVID-19 is going to mean. We're like you guys. We have no idea when government's going to have some return to what we consider to be normal trading environments. I don't think we'll ever see business be the same again. I think there's a big lesson for this for a lot of industry about scale and the economies of scale. I think that will be probably one of the key takeaways. Much the same as September 11 was for the world. I think COVID-19 is going to change the way we go about a lot of things and we do a lot of things. I would probably just implore you that if your businesses are open, to ensure that you've got those social distancing in place, because really, apart from a lack of customers, and we'll park that to the left for a second, the only thing that's going to close your business down, apart from that lack of turnover, will be police or health authorities pinging you for breaching the social distancing regimes. So that's VAC's perspective on this. Continue to lean on us. We're desperate to help. We really want to help. If ever there's a time you needed your industry bodies to stand up, well, now's it. I think we've done a pretty okay job so far. The feedback's been, on the whole, pretty good, apart from some members being fatigued with information, but sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't. So we'd rather be damned if we do. Just reach out to me at VACC re-COVID. Chris, I'm not sure what the scenario is. Do you take questions here, or do I just dive into?
I think there's a couple of things, and please, everyone that's on the call, you're going to have millions of questions to ask you. So let's use this opportunity with Michael and take it and ask the questions. A couple of things from my perspective, Michael. You mentioned there a few times information being available, and what we'll be doing is sharing it on our website, and I'll forward that. It's cdps.com.au. If you go to the podcast section, episode 4, just beneath the episode, you will have different materials. We've already got the EPA document there for people to access. Whatever Michael sends through, there you go. Mm-hmm. Whatever Michael sends through, we'll attach them as PDFs there, so you can get on the website, click and download those as you require from anywhere around Australia and New Zealand or wherever that may be. I think there's global relevance to a lot of that information there. We have...
The information's been spot on, some feedback too from the industry. Michael, the VACC certainly produced some pretty robust and factual, helpful tips and tricks, well, not tricks, but just as facts really. And I've referred to it many times myself over the last few weeks, including talking to the support team there. So really big thumbs up to what VACC has done. And I personally subscribe to many different business groups and involved with different forums and information coming from all angles. And VACC, yeah, absolutely, it's been in line with every other piece of information that I've got, and very precise.
Thank you, Justin. That's good. And the other thing, as well as Chris's website, for the other interstate people, if you visit the MTAA, who is our national federation, which APRA, as you guys know, APRA, the national body, is part of the MTAA website, and MTAA, which is run by Richard Camp, who does an absolutely, I think he's a fantastic ambassador for automotive, but in particular for dismantles, who he has a massive interest in. If you go to the MTAA website, I think it breaks it down by state as well. So Richard's done a really good job. And thank you for your words, Justin. That's good. But all those factual informations and all those things happened when I was on annual leave. So we'll straighten it up and get to some inaccuracies for you, mate, just to make sure you're running into some dramas. If you don't mind, I might just flick over to this document just for a quick 1 minute, Chris, and wrap me up, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. The EPA EPA Victoria Auto Recyclers Guidelines. First of all, a massive shout out to EPA Victoria for their collaborative nature and keeping VACC and VACC members involved in the whole process all the way through. Unbelievably good agency to work with. I never thought I'd say that out loud about a government agency about 5 or 6 years ago, but they've had a change in culture in there, I suppose, and we're sort of seeing similar type things happen in big roads, which is really exciting as well from a Victorian perspective. However, just so you know, like Chris said, these guidelines are an important step for the VACC and the Automotive Dismantlers and Recyclers Executive Committee, of which Chris is one, and it's headed up by Wayne Allway. Includes people of the ilk of Mike Third and Dale Limlack and Campbell Brown from ACM and Mick Cox and Dean Howe and Justin and forgive me if I forgot Emma McIndoe, of course. Got to show our true diversity there, and she's an absolutely fantastic thinker. But the guidelines are a really important step towards getting towards a government-endorsed end-of-life vehicle program for Australia. Now, we've all seen the slides before, and we're seeing the slides that Mongolia has an end-of-life vehicle program, but Australia doesn't, and so on and so forth. We all know the stats. I'm not going to bore you with that. However, what's important about this document, and this is before Minister Susan Lace federally, and with Richard Dudley, is that it's the first time a standard has been created where the standard has been driven by industry and also by the key government agency in the state at that time. There's massive interest in it federally. We were well down the track to having the Minister for Environment's office come back to Richard Dudley and ourselves at VACC to convene to discuss further how an end-of-life vehicle policy would look, apart from the standard, of course. But of course, as with everybody, COVID-19 certainly threw a spanner in those works. However, we'll come back. We'll give the government two weeks or 2 more weeks or so to breathe with regards to COVID, and we'll go back to that. Well, we will really, the conversations are happening, and the conversations are good. There's nothing like evidence-based portfolios to convince government what they've got to do. And there's nothing like proving, I mean, we were in the midst, we had the perfect storm happen for us, I suppose, with the bushfires and the whole thing about climate change and environmental perspectives and all the situations that were happening in Victoria, out of Campbellfield and so on and so forth. For us, we struck hard, and we struck with a fantastic document that's not full of drama. So, Victoria members, thank you for your help. Interstate, there's massive interest interstate, and I know some of the other MTAs are looking hard at this document and looking to engage with their own EPAs in those states. And I think we will get there. It's going to be, again, a slow journey. This is the thing with committees. Everything is a slow journey. They're big ticket items. Mick Cox used to always say to me, Mick, we've got to find the apple. We've got to find the apple to get members engaged and interested. Well, this is the first bite of the apple. Okay, the big apple is getting that end-of-life vehicle program up for those who want to participate, and letting government see the sophistication of dismantling businesses and dismantling people. Again, I'm not pissing in your pocket, but I say if you're on this phone call or on this video call or teleconference or Zoom, whatever it is, you're already, to me, as a dismantler, you're a sophisticated person because you've taken the time and you actually know how to access it too, which is a big challenge. So we're doing a lot of stuff at VACC. Reach out if you're not a member, or become a member. Happy to have a chat to you. Yeah, that's all I've really got to say. I really want to reach out. I really want to acknowledge Chris. Chris has been a fantastic ambassador for you guys. And whilst we're careful, we've got to be careful of who we endorse and whatever. But I'm proud for VACC to be associated with Chris and the Solutions. I'm honoured to that someone of the ilk of Mike Hanselman has made his way over to Melbourne to live and move his family here. And this sounds like there's going to be a few more Richmond Tiger members there. So thank you. And
he's a kangaroo. He's a kangaroo, mate.
Mate, you'll always be. It'll be a regretful decision. That's all I can say. But thank you, everybody. And if you've got any questions, reach out to me at VACC. I need help. I want to help.
Great, Michael. Thank you very, very much. I want to throw over to Chad, actually, now that we're talking about Chad. And obviously, having been the immediate past president of the ARA, you had a bit to do with these types of sort of governmental regulations and so on. The type of work that VACC is doing, tell us a little bit about how in the US that works and what you see here as a comparison.
I honestly think that what the VACC has produced is superior to anything we have in the US. I don't believe I've seen a document like that in the US yet. And so it's impressive to see that you're proactive, you're stepping forward to make it happen. And so I think that you're lucky here in Australia to have that and have the government working with the recyclers to develop the process. And so I absolutely applaud the effort and say it's a good job. Keep up the good work, Michael.
I think in the context of, you only know how good or bad something is if you've got something to compare it to.
Right.
And that's why I asked for Chad's sort of input there, because he's seen both sides of the fence, if you like, and we can compare it. So I think that's really good feedback. And from your perspective, Michael, and BSC, I think that's excellent. I want to pick up on something, Michael, that you said there about dealerships and dealership sales. And Justin, I'll sort of refer to you here as well for a second before I hand over to you. But dealership sales, I think you mentioned new car sales are down 61%.
70%. They were down 61% for the back portion of March.
Okay.
So April.
New car sales 70% down. New parts sales 41% down. Dealership sales. Yep. Again, this is a sort of a theme that's been coming through over the last few weeks with the calls. And I think from auto recyclers' perspective that are on this call and other stakeholders, I noticed there's some people from Capricorn on the call, which is great to see you guys participating. What does that mean if new car sales are down by 70%? That means there's more older vehicles, more vehicles are being kept on the road. People aren't changing their cars. And from a perspective of the automotive recycling industry, as we've seen in times of, economic distress, people don't change their cars. People don't take out a new car sort of warranty type deal because they haven't bought the car. What does it mean? It means that they keep their old cars and they need to repair them. So I think that's something that as an industry we need to prepare for and make sure that we're ready for as soon as, industry goes back to some kind of normality. So I urge people to start doing that work in the background. Justin, from your perspective, what are the things that you're doing now, call it in the quiet time or in a period where sales are possibly off a little bit for obvious reasons, insurance claims? I've got some evidence out of some insurers that claims are down 60% in the Australian market, while others in the UK, for example, are down 85%. Less cars on the road, less cars being involved in accidents, less cars requiring repair at mechanic shops. What are you doing at the minute to sort of stay relevant?
Yeah, well, it's absolutely a fascinating time, and there's a little swing away from panel right now. We've seen some of the larger panel groups, AMA, being the dominant player in the Australian market, has gone into perhaps a little bit of a hibernation mode. So work flowing through from that group, which represent about 30% of our panel market, has reduced. I think it's short term, but I think there'll be a tail there where it's a reduced demand for several months. Also, just touching on AMA, it is a big part of our industry in relation to panel, and their approach with this vertical integration scenario with ACM parts will have an impact as well. So perhaps where some of the dismantlers are focused on panel, they need to shift their focus perhaps even back towards the old school, if I can call it, the retail days. A lot of people working from home now, trying to do some of the simple jobs from home. We know that's harder than it once was, perhaps 20 or 30 years ago. Not that I was around then, of course. I think I was probably still primary school, guys. I feel like I'm hanging out with my parents here. There's a shift, but look, mechanical trade's still operating, albeit reduced volume as well. We're certainly seeing some larger jobs being postponed. If you're looking at spending $5,000 to $10,000 on an engine replacement job, and you've lost your job or your partner's lost their job, then they're being put on hold. So the profile in terms of the parts going out the door is a little different right now, but it's short term. So we need to focus on where it's going to be in 6 months. And we can talk about a few different areas of change, and we'll touch on change and where the industry is perhaps heading as well. So focus on the short term, solve the problems, but let's look at the big picture too, guys.
Yeah. One of the things, I actually got a text from someone in Brisbane on Sunday who's been watching the podcasts, and he made mention that they're seeing an increase in sales of mechanical components, but mechanical components not at the upper level, in the $700-800 range type of
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, I was going through our sales only last night, and yeah, there's a huge chunk in that $3,000 to $1,000 range, and very few as a percentage. When I talk about the revenue profile, it's a lot less than normal above that $1,000 mark.
Yeah,
still happening, but just less.
From a US experience and your ownership of Council Automotive Recycling, 6 months ago and over the past 20 years, what have you seen in these types of environments? What do you think the opportunity is?
Well, I look at this in the U.S. as sort of like an income tax refund check. Is what I would call it in the U.S. This is a stimulus payment that's come out to the Australians. The U.S. Employees have gotten similar type of stimulus. They're spending that money to make repairs that are critical to keep their vehicle on the road. And so if they need the starter or alternator or some kind of mechanical part, they are going to be foregoing repairs on a panel repair. They're going to keep the car mobile so they can get back and forth to work or do what they absolutely have to, and sacrificing some panel repairs. And so, but we always have seen a spike in mechanical revenue in the U.S. During anytime there's a refund check coming out from the government. Absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent. Michael, and I certainly don't want to put you on the spot here with this because you represent a number of different, sectors within the industry. I have a view that an increased volume of recycled parts being used in the repair process, both mechanical and collision, is a good thing for the OEs as well, for the dealers. Now, counterintuitive thinking, but at the end of the day, if we're able to keep the vehicle on the road and repair the vehicle as opposed to not repair the vehicle and total loss it, ultimately the OEMs make 80% of the sales in the repair process, right? As a result, they get 80% of the benefit. Well, in fact, today it's probably 95% of the benefit. What can the VACC do to sort of promote to the consumer that recycled parts are here, they're a relevant part of the industry, they're a good part of the industry, they're a high quality component, genuine component. What is it there that we could do to promote, mechanical components to the mechanical repair industry from the automotive recycling industry? And how can the VACC help with that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a vexed question for me, Chris. You're right, but however, I would probably suggest, and that's more of a thing for APRA to take care of, as opposed to VACC, because it becomes a more dedicated, specific organisation to do that. However, and APRA's functioning well at the moment, but doesn't market itself tremendously well. That's my fault, and I'll take the weight for that. What can you do? I mean, apart from direct marketing, which we don't have, whilst we're pretty well resourced, VACC, we've got to be careful that we're not spending too much money directly marketing one industry over another. So that's the political comment. We could do a lot better, Chris, at pushing dismantles. Alan Marshall used to do a great job back in the day of putting out, the green theory and so on and so forth.
I think you're doing fine. I think possibly diluting the message there when you talk about regulation with the ELV policy, end of life vehicle policy, that is inadvertently helping our industry. Bringing regulation to the recycling industry puts it on a different playing field with the OEM network or the aftermarket providers. So I think, to say that you can't assist or you don't assist is not correct. I think you are. Perhaps you're just, the success hasn't come yet. When the regulation hits, and it will happen, we work in a very fragmented, somewhat unregulated industry. When ELV policy comes through, and I firmly believe that it will, that's almost the floodgates, and that alone will make a significant difference to demand on recycled parts. We all know it's great for the environment, it's great for the community. It makes sense. The world's a changing place right now, so ELV policy makes sense. It will help us.
Yeah, look, and that's why we're so, to quote, Mick Cox from many years ago, that's the apple for us and for you. So it's from us from a lobbying perspective, and the opportunity for every dismantler in Australia is that policy, is that ELV policy. However, in the immediate short term, while that's going to be again still continues to be a slow burn, but it will happen. I think we're closer to it than we've ever been, which is really, really positive. But in the short term, when I say the short term, the next year or two, what can we do as an association? Well, Justin, you're right. Our messaging is probably key. We're not marketers, and to be really honest, we don't market well at all anyway. And we've got proof. We've got plenty of examples where we just haven't marketed what's been a good product or a good system well. We're lobbyists, and we're here to lobby. But again, we can just continue to keep that messaging going at not just a state and federal level, but local level with local governments as well, I suppose.
Okay. Thanks, Michael. Justin, what are you doing about change? There's a lot of stuff that you've been working on from internally within your business to manage change within these times. So tell us a little bit about that.
For sure. So change is a little bit of a buzzword at the moment, and we've obviously had a crisis hit, and people are needing to change quickly and endorse the need for change in a whole bunch of areas of the business. So I thought we'd touch on that and dive a little deeper into the psychological aspects of us as leaders or our employees, or what we're going through and how that affects the traditional change curve. And there's some opportunities in this as well. So if I can refer to a couple of slides, and even for those who are well learned, that might be aware of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs in relation to human motivation and human needs and wants. So if we can have a look at that and then reflect back on the change curve, I think that would just be interesting to dive into, and happy to answer any questions on that. But I'm not a behavioural expert, but I certainly look at these the science and the lessons from history and see what we can take from that. So
Maslow's hierarchy, my favorite principle I learned in college. Absolutely my favorite principle.
There we go. I'll just grab a screen up here. So if we can see here, this is a traditional change curve, and basically it goes through people's feelings over time in an organisation. So we have here a key point would be denial. Then we go through this anger, frustration, bottom of the curve here. Then we explore opportunities, and then we go into acceptance, and we push forward. So along the bottom, we have a timeline, and that obviously varies depending on the level of change. But of course, many organisations, and certainly the big corporates, pushing from working in an office in a CBD location to working from home, that's a huge change for people. But what is interesting is that if we refer to Maslow's hierarchy of needs for a second, so there's 5 key levels. Now, there's different versions of this, but often when times are good, we sit in these upper levels of the hierarchy. So esteem and self-actualization. So when things are good at home, when things are good at work, this is what we aspire to, because all the bottom levels are already met. However, when a crisis hits, what do we have? We have this huge shift toward this lower level, this second level, this safety needs level. When we fall into this category, our motivation to make sure that we secure these personal securities, our safety, our health, a roof over our head, obviously our jobs, then the motivation level also increases quite a lot, not quite a lot, about tenfold. So the ability for us as leaders to invoke change is significant. Some people would say, never waste a crisis. I think that's it's a famous line. Some of us would have heard before, but don't waste a crisis. This is the time to change, make your organisation more efficient, more effective, and think about what struggles you may have had and resistance to change over the last decade. All of a sudden, crisis hits, bang! You've got the opportunity to make those rapid changes. So, we look back at the curve. and we look at this traditional curve here and we say, hey, this is really what is happening right now. So we're going from here, and we're all in a little bit of denial, a little bit of panic stage, a little bit of frustration, but then bang. This is how, or what I've experienced in our organisation and people I talk to, this is what's occurred over the last 3 or 4 weeks. So we're instantly accepting of change when we want to meet our safety needs. We're far more accepting. So that's a beautiful thing. We can look at. Let's refresh and go. The only other thing I'd say that we need here is that, so we're primed for change, is that we need leadership. If I'm sure people on this call, many of you are the leaders, whether you be the owners or the managers of respective organisations, as long as you're providing the leadership, change will occur. Fortunately or unfortunately, if you look on a larger scale, you look at United States, they have an interesting leader, some loved, not so loved. Mr. Donald Trump, he can rally the masses quite quickly, particularly when you're living in a state of fear and wanting to make sure that you're meeting those lower level of needs. So, interesting time. We can use it to our advantage. Just stop the chair there.
So, Justin, how have you used those principles in your business? Let's think about now in a tactical way. What have you done?
Safety, security for your employees. What kind of ideas have you done there?
Well, communication is key, number one. So when people are fearful, they look towards a leader and they look towards what they're saying, how they're acting, their body language. That is important. You must be strong. And I'm sure, as I said, many on the call have been tested in the last few weeks. So you don't always get it right, but leadership is what they need, and strength, and they find confidence in strong leadership. So there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't have all the answers, but we're working through them. These are our options. And if you can take a collaborative approach on that, I think that you get buy-in. You always get more buy-in from employees when you take that collaborative approach. But at the end of the day, you as the leader must make a decision. And in this rapidly changing environment, you must make that quickly. So it's been fascinating. It's actually been, if I can dare say, somewhat enjoyable to be the leader of our business here. Grant Walker Parts has been around for 40 years. It's still a privately owned, it's a family business. It's family finances. There's no outside influence, and we've never gone through this scenario before. We've always gone through growth. We're employing people, and then everything's been flipped on its head. So if you want to drill down to specifics, I'm not sure, Chris, if you want to have a chat about this now, but you certainly look at how you're servicing your retail customers, how you're servicing perhaps your panel. Retail's been a fascinating one too, where we haven't been able to have physical contact with our retail customers, but we've created a touchless, contactless scenario where they can be online, they can look at your parts. We talk about pictures of parts, and then we refer back to some of the inventory systems like Pinnacle, how important it is to be taking pictures of your inventory so you can show them, whether it be email or even text versions now. So, transferring from the call or a text or an email to showing them the part, to giving them the confidence, taking them on that little buyer journey, and then obviously converting and taking the cashless or the contactless payment. So we've looked at that area as a business as one example. Then of course all the other areas in terms of delivery, vehicle hygiene. Traditionally we don't deliver to residential addresses. Fortunately, we have a fleet of vehicles where we do have that option. So provided that the customer has paid up front and it's still safe, we can drop a part off to a residential house. There's no contact. Everyone's happy with the transaction journey.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Chad, have you had any news from US recyclers about what they're doing to sort of manage that change?
It's the same thing. I've heard some recyclers talk about a spike in e-commerce revenue, contactless shipping the product or whatever. I know of an operation. Actually, my previous operation, my brother owns our previous operation now. He went to doing the exact same thing and delivering to the retail customers to their front door. And so he's explored new options in order to meet the demand of the customer right now, where they can't get out or are fearful to get out. And so,
and that's where, if I can touch on the power of data too, where if we can move the reliance to part numbers as opposed to descriptions, then the accuracy of what you're delivering without physically seeing it has a huge benefit. So we talk about growth and we talk about change in the future. I think there'll be a much bigger reliance on the part number data, which is probably another topic for another day.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree with you. I believe that we're going to see a spike in e-commerce as a proportion of our total sales for the industry, and that requires us thinking a little differently. I need to spend $500 on a photo booth so I can image these pictures better. I need proper lighting. I need a camera that's better quality than what I'm currently using. And so those type opportunities and ideas are what you could be implementing right now if you're not already doing that. I believe that people that were ahead of the curve and did that 2 years ago are reaping the benefit today.
They are, for sure. And I'll be honest, we were lagging in that part of our business, so we've realigned some of our resources from the front end to the back end, and whether that be entering part number information and taking pictures, that will help. And I don't think we missed the boat on that. It's just that it's taken a crisis to really reflect on where we were weak and where the opportunities lie.
Yep. That was your denial phase.
Correct. But because I was wanting to meet those lower needs, bang.
Michael, have you had feedback from other ADRD or recycling division members around sales and how they're going? How many have closed? How many have stayed open? Do you have any of that type of information?
I don't have it specifically about opened or closed rates and staff numbers and so on and so forth. But the general conversations I've been having, and as we tend to find it in these lobbyist type roles, we're pretty much hard for us to get access to some of our members at times because at the time it's usually a boring and tedious subject that we want to speak to them about. However, the ones that I have spoken to have gone along the lines of what you initially said quite a while back in the conversation, Chris, when it comes to the opportunities that are available for consumers who don't want to spend money on a new part or do whatever the case is. So they are somewhat busier with consumers who have got time on their hands to actually fix this. But again, that's sort of counterbalanced by the fact that people think they can't go out still. That's part of our messaging, which we just really got to get it through everybody's head that you can actually get out there as long as you're practicing those social distancing things. But we will be doing a pulse survey. We'll be rolling that out hopefully in the next week, and that will cover every sector, and we'll cover a focus group of every sector to be able to get a monthly update on where we're at. Particularly employment numbers are key to this for us, because all governments are interested in is jobs. And then maybe now the environment's coming up a close second, but jobs is key. But not specifically, Chris, no.
All right. Well, it'd be good knowing that survey's coming out for those that are on the call, and spread the word to other peers in the industry. Fill those out. I know they take a little bit of time, but I think it's critical to provide that information so that we understand what's happening.
Yeah, Chris, and just so you know, with this survey and the conversation that we had internally, and it was pretty well headed up by Dr. Imogen Reid and John Guest internally, which is great, was that the survey will only be 4 questions. It'll be the same 4 questions every month. So hopefully it'll only take 5-10 minutes to fill out in its entirety monthly. But again, it allows a sector by sector. It allows for a true environmental scan of COVID-19 for government and stakeholders.
Perfect. Okay, so for all attendees that are on the call, if you've got any last questions, we've only got about 5 minutes left. Please get those in now. Michael's made the point there on the chat there that Victorian Tasmanian members can contact him at his email address, mmckenna@vacc.com.au. All other states, look at the MTA websites for relevant contact. We've got Marie Donato from MTA WA on the call. Thanks, Marie, for being on the call. And I urge people like Marie and Rob from Capricorn, or even Harry, who represents automotive recyclers through an association in New Zealand, Harry Dodson. Take a, you'll get a YouTube copy of this, and please share it, because there's some really good information in these sessions that we should be sharing throughout the industry. The more we can help, the better. We've got a question there from Darren at River Murray. My question is for Mick. Well, okay, that's obviously an insight.
It's a duvet.
Very good, very good. What shampoo do you use, Michael? Let's share that.
Mate, I tell you, I'm a tighter shoulders, and but the thing is, as most fashionistas such as myself do, we put a bit of product in the hair, a bit of the old Weller Balsam. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I know what it feels like, Mick. I know what it feels like. I actually just went for a haircut the other day, and it's
like George. You're like George Costanza. You should rub your head with baby oil and drape yourself in velvet, Chris. Anyway.
It's difficult to find a barber to cut your hair.
Very good. Justin, any final comments before we wrap up today's session?
No, just back on that word of change again, is that in summary, I think that we're looking at regulation will change our industry. So this is beyond our short-term changes. We've got regulation. I think that consolidation at some point will have a profound impact on our industry. We've seen it in other parts of the world, and we haven't really seen it here yet. I'd certainly like, hopefully, one of your podcasts to explore that scenario a little more. In Australia, we've seen various attempts, been unsuccessful. I think, as I said, we work in a very fragmented industry, and my view is that may change at some point. I also think that the e-commerce side of things will make a difference. We'll become more efficient, we'll become more accurate with the use of data. That will streamline our operations, and the use of back-end technology, which exists in other parts of the world. So change is coming. Let's endorse it. Let's use a crisis. Let's just drive the change, good changes, and do it now.
One of the things, Justin, while we're talking about change, one of the things that you've been fairly aggressive with has been around certification. Now, I know that from an NSF perspective, they've pulled out. The UK, if you saw the show last week, the UK is driving a certification program. And they are at the point of basically deploying as soon as COVID-19 is over. They'll have an independently audited and certification program that the Vehicle Recyclers Association is driving there. What's your view on that, and how can the industry use certification, if you like, as a way forward?
So we were lucky, fortunate enough to have the NSF certification into Australia, and unfortunately that's now been taken away. But I love the principle of third-party certification because it effectively reduces or mitigates the risk for a large company like an insurer. It reduces the risk of a director being negligent. So if you look at it on a different level, yes, we understand that there's complexities and perhaps consistency issues at times with regulating parts and businesses. However, as a whole, the concept, really what it's designed to do is shift the risk from somebody like a director in an insurance company deciding to use more secondhand parts. We are using a third-party regulated industry to provide our recycled parts. So as I said, NSF is now gone, but what we do also have is systems like the All Auto Recall system, which also mitigate risk. The All Auto Recall system, again, big fan of that because it's a rigid, systematic process and system that happens behind the scenes, back end, to ensure that recyclers are not selling inferior or recalled items. So again, that's about risk reduction for the wider community, and also obviously for those directors making the all-important decisions in terms of how much they use recycled parts within their repair process. And that's not just panel, that's mechanical too. So I think that the future definitely is regulation, but also certification.
Yep. Absolutely. And touching on that, the all auto recalls point of it, we just developed a flyer, and we're having the flyers printed right now, and all the subscribers that use the all auto recall system, we're sending 1,000 flyers out for each of you to put with your parts as you're delivering them, that says my part is safe, it's been checked for recalls. And so we are absolutely helping the recyclers get that word out to the end consumer that's buying the product. And our product also alerts you to future recalls. So if you sell a part today and a recall comes out on it in 30 days, you'll get an alert that says there's a recall on a part that you may have in your system. You may have sold.
And the key thing that is that it happens automatically. It's not a manual process. Right. So when you're a medium to larger size dismantler, you just can't keep track of the amount of items going out the door. So if that happens at a system level, then it's problem solved.
Yep. I think the message there critically is, again, I think we need to differentiate ourselves as an industry, as individual yards. And Michael, I know that VACC has, I think they've still got, is it the Green Stamp program or the, yeah?
Every state as well, MT, South Australia, West Australia.
Yeah. So those types of things, in the US, they've got the Gold program, the CAR program. They're really, really important. Yes, they are sort of regulating deals. They're within industry type stuff. I know the VACC one is more independent, but they are something. It's a step in the right direction. So I think the more of that you do, the more compliant you are, the more risk you're dealing with or mitigating, and the more differentiation you're providing for your own business and for the industry. So the more the better, in my view. Okay, without holding anyone up, we've gone an hour. I want to talk a little bit about next week's show. We've got a fairly amazing show happening next week. One of the attendees on this call today, Michelle Malik, is the CEO of Body Shop News and the group publisher of Body Shop News across multiple different continents. Michelle's been good enough to coordinate a session with the CEO of IBIS Worldwide and Body Shop Magazine, Jason Mosley, himself, Michelle Malik, and also Jason Stahl, the editor of Body Shop Business, part of the Babcock's Media Group in the US. So we've got US Body Shop Business, Babcock's Media. We've got UK or Europe, Jason Mosley, who's the CEO of IBIS. And we've got IBIS Worldwide, and we've got Michelle Malik, the CEO of Body Shop News Australia and other parts of the world. So it's going to be a really big event. All of those organisations will be promoting the podcast across different continents. Time-wise, we're not sure exactly what time it's going to happen on at the minute because we're trying to coordinate everyone in distinctly different time zones. But certainly it's going to be a show where we'll be talking about a number of different things specific to, other stakeholders that we sell product to as an industry. Recyclers selling to collision repairers, the view of these different organisations with regard to how we can interact better with the industry. So stay tuned for that one. It really is a big episode that we're looking at having next Tuesday sometime. So please take note of the time. We'll try and communicate that as clearly as possible over the next day or two. Marie's just sent a text through. Thank you to Michael. Excellent information you shared. Thanks, Justin. Excellent, particular interest significance to help recyclers. So thank you, Justin. Con will send links out to the EPA document, but you can get those at cdps.com.au. Go to the podcast tab and you'll see it underneath the episode 4 podcast. There'll be different links to different documents that Michael will share with us. Otherwise, you can go onto the VACC website and I'm sure there's, you'll find it there somewhere. Yep. Okay. In closing, Michael, thank you very much. Any closing words from you? Thank you. Justin, you're on mute. Any closing words from you before we we head off?
No.
Excellent. Chad?
Nope, I'm good. Appreciate everybody attending.
Thanks very much, everyone. Really appreciate your attendance, and we'll see you next week.
Brilliant. Well done,
Bye then.
guys. Thank you.